today's show, we have a variety of guests who will be speaking about topics related to climate change and colonialism. So let's begin and welcome our guests to the show. So, hello everybody, thank you for being here. The first thing is I'm going to ask you just to introduce yourselves, the kind of work that you're doing right now, and then we'll move on to the next questions. So,
Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa Vivar. I'm the Executive Director of Lazos America Unida, which is a Mexican organization based in New Jersey. And I'm also a community researcher and activist back in Jersey.
My name is David Karabelnikoff. I'm Aleut, or Unungan, from Alaska. I've been working with the Institute for Village Resiliency to help communities relocate from climate change at Alaska Pacific University. I'm also working with Indians of all tribes to bring recognition and attention to the 50th anniversary of Alcatraz.
Hello everyone, my name is Tre Vasquez. I'm here as a youth organizer with the North Bay Organizing Project based in Santa Rosa, California. And I'm also representing myself and my family as folks who are committed to defending the earth.
thank you. So please, maybe I guess, in the same way that we began, talk to us more about the kind of work that you're doing, a little bit about the organization, the kinds of community involvement that is happening in your respective regions.
So basically, we try to, at this moment, we try to create binational sustainable projects and basically to create awareness of how everybody can collaborate together to ensure that all those traditions among indigenous population continue existing and it's a responsibility to preserve them. But also, the Lazos America Unida has been created, what it means, lazos, creating ties among people, and to ensure that we understand that everybody is responsible for what's happening out there, and that everybody has the knowledge, and everybody has an opportunity to contribute to society in any way possible. So basically, that's what we've been doing since 2003 with Lazos America Unida, and now we're traveling to the sites that are being affected by the earthquakes recently in Mexico, and bring the items that artisans has been creating and try to help them through also bring them to the United States and create awareness that they continue preserving their culture and traditions and how we can collaborate to support them as well. So,
How about your work? What's your
Lately,
community?
lately, I've been working with Empowerment Works. That's a nonprofit that sponsors about 60 different projects. One of those is Indians of all tribes. That was the organization that was formed during the peaceful occupation at Alcatraz. And we've been trying to bring attention to the plight of indigenous peoples in the early 21st century, and also to do advocacy work for communities in Alaska that are threatened from climate change, which there are several dozen communities that are threatened by different levels and at different degrees from climate change, and that will face relocation and be some of the first climate change refugees in the world, unfortunately.
And myself as a youth organizer, first and foremost, is to work with young people through education and engagement, really building student and youth power to promote youth to engage in their community and be a key part of decision making when it comes to economic, environmental, and racial justice locally in the community there. And we're also working on a project called Sanación del Pueblo, which is sort of a mutual aid model, natural traditional healing clinics to really say, like, we have the resources within our community to be to have self-determination or collective determination. So those of us who have endured different levels of trauma due to colonialism, we also have the ability to heal ourselves and take care of each other to be strong.
So now I want to know more about the subject is colonialism, but also climate change. So how have these, or the topic that we're discussing, how are the communities that you're working with have been affected? You mentioned the earthquakes, for example, and then you have other aspects that are connected, right, to the subject that we're discussing. Can you talk a little bit more in depth? For example, how are people in Oaxaca being affected by the earthquakes? What are some of the struggles that people are facing, and also some of the work? And I know coming from the Santa Rosa area, for example, looking at the fires or looking at global warming, how are these things affecting your communities in particular?
I think as being from my own side, and the way that I see it, and is that nobody's ready to overcome the challenges that any natural disaster per se provides to communities, right? Nobody's ready. But that's why it's very important for us to visit the sites that are affected by these earthquakes in Oaxaca, for example, in which the indigenous population is big, and they also speak their own language, and few people are bilingual per se. So it's very important for migrants, the migrants that we represent here, which is a big number, to be aware of what's happening back in our born towns, and and also how we can collaborate to help them, And so our purpose has been visit the sites, find out for ourselves what the areas have been affected, what type of resources are around that we can connect with the communities that are in need, and also how we can bring that, as I said, those issues back to the United States, and start talking about it. And I think it's a very important way to start thinking that is when something happens in any place, most in the indigenous populations, it's affecting us as well here. So it's very important to recognize that and to start acting, not just watching it in the social media and put a like or solidarity just through a post in Facebook, I think, or other social media. I think it's important to take actions.
And then, can you talk a bit about how were these communities affected? I know you mentioned in the previous conversation that we had the lack of transportation, the lack of electricity, or maybe some people's homes through the landslides were destroyed. Can you talk a little bit more about what are kind of the needs right now and the work that you did? Because I know your organization helped to send a lot of resources.
Yeah, it was terrible because, as we said, Juchitán, for example, Juchitán, Oaxaca, was the first city affected by September 7 earthquake. And this 8.2 earthquake was terrible for all the city. All the homes are destroyed until now. More than 5 months later, community is still waiting for support. Of course, we send a lot of donations in food and other species, but in reality, in the construction of these homes, people still waiting for resources, and it looks like everybody forgot about it. We don't talk about it anymore because it's not the fashion in the world. So it's very difficult for the community because they're expecting that somebody is gonna there and support them, and also corruption is all over the world, and they were expecting money that never arrived, and so it's very critical that we continue going back to their cities and show some support. When they see us, they were with these smiles, full of hope that somebody came back to them and they're willing to collaborate to build their homes. There is now these places with lack of transportation. There is people with little resources of food because the long distance that they have to travel like 3 hours in order to get some food. There is places where there is no water. Still no water until this moment. So they try to find other sources for to drink, right? And those sources are not very healthy. So it's also affecting the health. It's many corporations that are visiting them, but basically people who knows a little bit more about these resources or has money is taking more advantage than ever of these disasters. And they don't care actually about what's happening. They just go and take, and the community is still suffering those consequences. I said more because the Oaxaca population is still the majority indigenous. So we as migrants, we have living in the United States, we have to create awareness and try to create the conscience that everything that we do here is also affecting them, because the majority of the companies when I visit Oaxaca were from the United States. So this abuse continue happening and nobody takes the responsibility of what's going on over there.
How about for you? How has your community been affected?
Well, Alaska, when we talk about climate change and global averages, the Arctic is disproportionately affected. When we talk about 1 degree Celsius climate change rising, that's actually 6 degrees in the Arctic. So you have dozens of villages in Alaska that are off the road system that don't have steady transportation, that are facing coastal erosion or thawing permafrost, that are changing our ancestors have long time historical knowledge of the cycles of nature, and now we're entering a place where even that traditional ecological knowledge is not we're off the charts, because humans have never experienced 400 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. Even as long as we've been on the face of the planet, we're going into a place where all of that historical knowledge is and the huge amount of work that community members have done to create bodies like the Bering Sea Elders Council was dissolved by the Trump administration. And so the inputs we've had into the decision-making process have even been cut off, so that the villages are not able to be heard. And these are some of the same reasons why student activists and just even concerned in Native people took it upon themselves to do things like occupy Alcatraz, to do the Standing Rock occupation, is because we've been vanished in our own homelands and ignored and made invisible, to the point that we have to wait for certain times where there's so much pent-up desperation to bring voice and articulation to the issues that are not only facing our communities, but that are facing humanity as a whole, and to try to bring attention and awareness to how we are treating the earth is how we will be treated, and we are not doing a very good job as humans.
Thank you. And how about in the North Bay? How is the community being affected over there?
So I think similarly, it's very interesting to hear everyone, because there's very, very similar key points that keep repeating themselves in all these different places. We've kind of, this tragedy happened in October, and then there was the aftermath of it, and then it kind of gets forgotten because of media stops talking about it, but the struggles are still there, and people who have been displaced and who have been had their home and livelihood impacted are still in that struggle. And it doesn't necessarily get better, there's not improvement to it, because the system is still the same, right? So before the fires, there was a housing crisis. Before the fires, jobs are hard to find. Before the fires, we live in a xenophobic, racist country, right? And so all of that with these disasters gets magnified. So we're kind of living in the after effects of that, and looking at, well, what can we really do to create long-term sustainable change? And in order for that to happen, the voices of those who are most harshly impacted have to be at the table in terms of what kind of recovery that we're going to make. It can't be the voices of those who don't know what it's like to be in the shadows, right? And so I think that's a lot of the work that is really critical to us there, is making sure that we continue to center those voices, and that the steps that we take to rebuilding our community be done the right way this time.
And then connecting through the conversation we had before, which took place in an event on campus. So I'm bringing up some of the points that we could address here. And the idea that you mentioned that people are being taken advantage of during these situations. And I know you mentioned something about the rents going up after a lot of the fires that happened. And then the same thing happening in Alaska, right? Like how are these current times, affecting the population in this way in which we want to help, but at the same time there's also these mechanisms in which maybe further oppression continues. So maybe if you can address like that aspect of what's going on in these communities, I think it would help for people who are not familiar with the issues learn a little bit more about the ins and outs that maybe we don't see in the general media.
I think we have to talk about the butterfly effect. Whatever is happening in the United States is happening in any other country as well. First of all, let's talk about Katrina, for example. How many years it took, or it's taking, a city in the United States to recover? When it was noticed, everybody was trying to help. Same thing in Texas recently. So everybody's trying to help. But then as soon as everything passed, people forget. And we're thinking that by just sending a bag of beans and tortillas to the people, they're going to be fine because you give it once. But we don't take responsibility about doing the follow-up. What is happening with that people? How are they doing, right? How you expect to be treated yourself if you were in the same situation? We forgot about it. So basically that's what's happening also in cities that are being affected by this climate change, and as we said, these natural disasters nobody was ready for. If people living in the United States is not ready with all the resources that we have here in the United States, imagine the people that is in other countries in which has been oppressed for years, has been used, has been abused, by those who has knowledge and more resources than them. So basically, as our work has been going there and try to find out how we can help and how we can learn from them, because they try to survive and they try to deal with the daily basis needs, and also with that invasion of companies that try to take advantage of these type of needs. But it's not also happening in Mexico only, for example, in my area that I work with. But basically here in the United States is the same situation. So I think it's very important for the community, for the students, for everybody who is watching this video to understand that we have to take responsibility of what's going on in our lives, and not only when a situation occurs, and send something and feel happy by giving something that maybe you don't need, right? But how we can continue working to ensure that that thing, that little help that you sent, it becomes really a life-changing. But not only for the people that you send them the help to, but for yourself. How you want to, everything that you see in the social media could help you to understand that it's a time not only to give, but also to receive all the information, analyze it, and take action for the better well-being of all.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, in Alaska, there's been several studies done by the different federal agencies, but it is kind of like the villages that need to relocate. It's kind of like a hot potato that nobody really wants to take responsibility for, and no federal or state agency has really accepted responsibility to push forward for land transfers for communities that are interested and have made self-determination acts or passed resolutions to move. They're left kind of up to their limited resources and underfunded, scarce resources. These are villages of a couple hundred people that maybe not. English is not their first language. They do not have like a plethora of educated professionals to navigate the federal bureaucracies or even state to acquire new lands. I think only the village of Newtok was able to locate new land at their village site from Matarvik. And even they were struggling with, outside people coming in and claiming space for themselves and being opportunistic with money management. So it's been very, I think it's a very similar situation that, every once in a while you see a picture of a house in Alaska that has thawing permafrost and is falling into the ocean, and then, the media passes us by, and yet, there's communities that have needed to relocate, since 1970s. And I think the important part is that there is the ability to try to imagine a different world and imagine what colonization has really shaped a lot of the capitalism that we find ourselves participating in and really subjected to, and whether we want to or not. But this is a time where hopefully people will try to imagine a different world being possible, and even seeing like what would the sustainable community look like, and using these the first climate change refugees within the United States as an opportunity to try to envision a new world being possible, rather than it being just someone else's problem to deal with, but something that could really show the benefits of our innovation and our ability to live in harmony with the planet. But also, it's a need for governance to be representing and concerned about the constituencies in these and that are being most affected by climate change right now.
Thank you. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, just seconding what everyone is saying. I love it. Just all the creativity and brilliance in this room here. I think, for a lot of us, we live in so much of a reactionary society, and capitalism creates that too. There's a problem, and then you go and buy the solution, right? And the thing that can be so powerful about this moment for those of us who come from communities who are either in the aftermath of disasters, but also those of us, we don't know when it's coming. Similar to Teresa was saying, nobody knows necessarily how to exactly prepare to how to recover from this, but we have so much brilliance and strength in our community that has been around for so long in terms of our resiliency. I'm talking about 526 years of resiliency in the face of colonialism. That's power. And so I think that we live in a critical moment right now where our unity, like unifying, even in this moment, I'm having the opportunity to meet these amazing people from different places, but these conversations in this building builds us stronger as a movement collectively. And so I think this also is an opportunity for us to try something new, try new things. And maybe they're old things, right? But we're bringing them back. And not just keep trying to repeat the same cycle. It's just not working.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point about, imagining new worlds and the creative process, because also within social change, there's different ways of going about it. I think right now, with the topic at stake, there might be this need to provide basic needs, to send goods, to send food. At the same time, I know because you're involved in different projects, there's digital activism, there's direct protest, there's political advocacy, and also artwork, in particular poetry. And since I know you're a poet, I would like to offer the space for you to be able to perform something for us. So if you'd welcome that, we could take a break and then have you do a poem for us. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good?
If
Okay.
if they do want to.
No.
Well,
Thank you.
so we're going to take a quick break so that Trey could do a poem for us. So we'll be right back in a second.
I prayed for rains, cold enough to freeze the chains on our heart and brains so I could cut it. Cause I'm sick of the what ifs. What if we were free? What if the police didn't terrorize our streets? What if you saw me and knew we were one? What if the sun decides to never rise again? What if they take my family and friends? Would I know how to get them back? Get in that state of mind that's ride or die, all of us or none, connected by the drum and sun, inventor of all things. I dreamed like the cage bird sings, cause although they clip my wings, I am still here. There is no running when they're gunning, son and daughters the color of the earth. Know your worth. Since birth, there's no price equal to our lives, so get up. Put them bottles down, break the glass pipes now, cause too many of us act like we know what's going on, but stay stuck on stupid till the break of dawn. Remember who we are, descendants of the stars.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful, and I think that highlights the different methods and new ways that we can create and imagine our new world, and poetry is very central, so thank you so much for that. So just to close, I'd like to ask, since we're in a university, if you have any words of advice that you'd like to offer for the students or the viewers who are watching this clip on the different ways in which we can enact social change in our own respective communities. So what kinds of advice or words, final closing thoughts do you have to offer?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the time at the university, for everything that I learned from, and the opportunity to contribute to these videos. And I hope that everybody who's watching understand that everybody born with a purpose, and Creator sent us with that ideal, and nobody is an accident. And I think everybody can contribute to the society we live in any way possible. All of us are important for a social change. And all the students that are watching us, please believe in yourself. You are a powerful voice for those who can speak, but you represent the future, and it's in your hands what type of future you want to provide to others. And we're here to support whatever we can provide for you. Please come with us.
I think everyone that is alive right now has a huge opportunity and responsibility to make a difference in whatever way that they can. Everyone has bundles of responsibility that you pick up and that are yours to carry, and no one else can carry them for you. And you have to believe in yourself to be able to bring these from the dream world, into this world. You may not see it right away, but you never know unless you try how to bring this into this world. And so try to be creative in your way of contributing to society and to the world that the future generations will inherit.
going along with that is continuing to do that critical work within ourselves and within our families and communities to bring out and cultivate the strength and power that's already here. A lot of times we're looking for something outside of ourselves to come and inspire us or make it better again, but it's already here with us. And so how do we take care of ourselves and each other in order to sustain these movements that we're trying to build? And it can be very small. Nothing is in vain. You know, it's like the small ways that we can make concrete change in our day-to-day life, and then that ripples out in a bigger way.
And also how to do this with love, right? How to make that central to the struggle that we're involved with. So thank you so much. That's it for this episode on Woke in the CV. Please check out